Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, stay with us for our exclusive interview with Pennsylvania's senior Senator Arlen Specter. Back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome back to the program, and again, thanks for watching. Terry Madonna here for Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, I'll tell you what a time to be a United States Senator. There's, between the judiciary issues and the great debates before the country on what to do about a whole variety of things, from wireless eavesdropping to interrogating terrorists to the war in Iraq, you name it. There's a ton of issues before the United States Senate as it takes up its business before the election recess. Joining me, as I used to say often is the case, but now he's back, US Senator Arlen Specter, and John Baer, columnist with the Philadelphia Daily News, joins me to help do the interview. John, welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
Now, it's been a while since we have done this, isn't it?
Been a while.
Senator, welcome to the program.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Terry, for the invitation. And John?
Now, I want to start, before we get into the questioning, you look great. Now, give the folks in Pennsylvania a quick update. You look wonderful, and I noticed you're feisty, because before we got on the program, you were back to your feisty self. Go ahead. Tell us how you're doing.
Well, I had a little bout with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, and I'm symptom-free, and I've got my hair back, and like Samson, it brings my strength. And I used to be pale and thin and bald, and when you're pale and thin and bald, you've only got one way to go, up, and I feel fine.
Well, you look great, and I just want, before, John and I were chatting when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. When
Terry, I've had more comments about my hair than anything else.
Isn't that remarkable?
Conrad Burns said he got an email from one of his Montana constituents saying he likes it short. And Hillary Clinton stopped me on the floor one day and said her mother had an opinion, and I got that. I got that opinion.
So much for these Supreme Court nominations,
caused more interest and more controversy and more comment than anything except my votes on Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito.
You should let that be a lesson. Anytime you have trouble, just do something different with your hair, and it'll probably pass.
There you go. All right. Well, let's turn to the big issues. I mean, there is no bigger issue at the moment in the United States Senate, I think, than this debate over what we should do when we capture suspected terrorists on the battlefield and whether the Geneva Convention rules should apply to them. President Bush, I think they've suspended their interrogations of these folks. They've turned, the CIA has turned them over, if I understand this correctly, to the military. Some of your colleagues in the Senate have said, we got to stick to the Geneva Conventions, no watering them down. Senator McCain and Senator Graham, I know guys you've worked with. Where's all this going, Senator?
Well, Terry, it's not a matter of whether the Geneva Convention should apply, because the U.S. Supreme Court has said they do apply. So that's that, and now we have to deal with them. I believe that it is possible to accommodate all of the interests. For example, Senator McCain, who knows the most about the subject because he was a victim of torture, does not want to water down the Geneva Conventions to suggest in any way we're retreating, and I think he's right about that. President Bush and General Hayden, head of the CIA, want to be sure that their agents know what the parameters are, stay within them, and don't subject themselves to being sued. Now, the 1990 Geneva Convention on Torture has this common Article 3, which refers to dignity, and that reservation incorporates 5th, 8th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, and General Hayden, the President, have wanted those standards where there has been a lot of judicial interpretation which gives the boundaries, and I believe that we can reach an accommodation. Earlier today I was talking to Senator Warner. Yesterday I was on a TV show with Senator Graham. I think we can work it out.
John, did you want to follow?
Are you, it sounds like you are closer to the John McCain-Graham view of this than the White House view of this. Is that right?
Well, I want to bring them together. I chair the Judiciary Committee, John, as you know, and the responsibility on the Geneva Convention and the war crimes comes under my committee. And I want to find a way to analyze it and bring them together. I think we need to question suspects to protect Americans against terrorism. We also have to comply with the Geneva Convention. And I've found that if you work at it long enough and hard enough, bring people together, and that's our job.
How quickly can you resolve this?
Well, we're taping on a Monday. I've already been on the phone all morning, and I'll be meeting with Senator McCain, Senator Graham, and Senator Warner later today. Our staffs are working, and I'm talking to the White House. I talked to General Hayden about it. I think we can get it worked out in the next few days. The Senate is scheduled to adjourn on September 30th, a week from Saturday, and the leader wants to bring the bill up in the last week, and I think we can do it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue with this subject. We have our senior United States Senator Arlen Specter with us in the studio. As Senator said, we're taping on a Monday. This show will air Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of this coming week all throughout Pennsylvania. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with John Baer, columnist with the Philadelphia Daily News. We have our senior Senator, United States Senator, Arlen Specter in the studio with us. John Baer continues.
One more question before we leave that subject of the Geneva Convention and the issue of interviewing suspected terrorists. Does just the fact that we're having this discussion at the national level help Republicans this fall?
I think that it may well help Republicans by showing that we are focused on a major national issue and that we are not monolithic and that we are thoughtful, and especially if we get the job done, which I think we can do.
Does it hurt the president to have this discussion going into the fall?
I don't think it does. I think that the American people expect senators to be independent. We have a well-established doctrine of separation of powers, and I think the president appreciates candor and appreciates different thinking. When he has the White House and they're all his employees, there's a natural tendency to perhaps not want to disagree with the boss. If you're a senator and you genuinely disagree with him, he appreciates that, respects it.
Senator, let's, if we can, segue into the business in Iraq. As you know, Iraq and the war on terror are really the two most important subjects on the minds of Americans, I think, since we sort of got in a little bit to the midterm elections this year. In all the polls that are done, these are the two, I think, great issues of the moment. Now, I know you've traveled over the years extensively into in the Middle East. You probably, as much as any other person in the Senate, have a feel for what's going on over there. What is your position at the moment on what we should be doing in Iraq? I mean, there are various calls to leave, as you know. John Murphy, a colleague, different party, colleague of yours from Pennsylvania, immediate withdrawal. There's a big debate. What's your current thinking about that?
The best idea that I've seen is one which would divide Iraq into three regions, one for the Shiites, one for the Sunnis, and one for the Kurds. And the glue to hold them together would be the oil revenue. Mm-hmm. That hasn't sat too well with the people there. Almost nothing does. There's no doubt about the fact that there's a civil war going on. People are worried it'll deteriorate into a civil war. Well, we've got it. The insurgency is that serious. But then what do? We'd like to extricate ourselves there, but we're not going to leave Iraq in a situation of turmoil. We had an extensive debate last spring, and Senator John Kerry offered an amendment to withdraw totally by July of 2007, and it got 14 votes. Yeah. Now, that's an ignominious result in the United States Senate.
Sure.
So if somebody has a better idea, I'd like to hear it.
Well, let me ask you this question then. I guess Senator Biden also has been promoting this three-state nation, so to speak. But if we leave precipitously, does that not when we leave, does that not leave with a Shia majority, Iraq as a client state of Iran, and we've got ourselves into another problem with Iran, not the least of which is what happened in in Lebanon, which you well know?
Yes, it does. It complicates it because it has the potential to bring Iraq under Iran's umbrella, and it would be a major failure. We don't have to guarantee success. We're not guarantors, but we ought not to abandon the effort, and we'll lose tremendous credibility if we withdraw. And right now, we're trying to build up the Iraq military and the Iraq police force. And our military people on the ground continue to think that we can succeed in the long run. I was in Iraq, and you get a little different feel when you're there than when you look at the news media.
All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll let John Baer lead off with a questioning. We have the pleasure of having our senior United States Senator Arlen Specter in the studio with us today. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania, and by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. John Baer and I are chatting, trying to interview our senior Senator Arlen Specter, who always has the final word. John Baer, go ahead.
Let's move to more local politics. A year ago, you said that your #1 priority for 2006 would be the reelection of Senator Santorum. What are you doing in that regard, and how do you think it's going?
I am helping him raise money. I am campaigning for him. Spoke for him earlier today. I'll be speaking for him again later today. Having a major fundraiser at my condo, raised him a couple $100,000, giving him my list. And how do I think it's going? I think it's a battle, but I think he will win. I have felt that way. Even when the polls were 18 points apart, he's narrowed the gap. I think that Rick's persona is very strong. I think he's done a lot for Pennsylvania. We've worked at a team, and seniority is very, very important. And we have brought major funding for Pennsylvania's highways, for the abstinence program, and for our colleges and hospitals. And people appreciate what he's done.
How do you reconcile the fact for his campaign that maybe 6 to 7 Pennsylvanians believe that the president is not doing a good job, and you have a U.S. Senator who votes with that president better than 90% of the time? How do those two reconcile in a Santorum victory?
Well, because I think Rick has been able to take positions that are that people like, even though he's generally with the president. Take the stem cell issue as an example. We worked together and produced a bill which accomplishes both of our principles. I'm concerned about stem cells, which have the potential to solve most of the major medical problems, need federal funding. Rick was concerned about not killing the embryo. We found a way to come together. And I think the final bill that we came up with, the president didn't like, but Santorum was for it. So he's not always with the president.
Mm-hmm. On the campaign side of things, I mean, the key to this election, and maybe you'll disagree, is a place where you always do very well, and that is in the Philadelphia suburbs. I don't think any analyst who's looked at this race believes, and the suburbs are changing. I mean, you've relied on them heavily in your reelection efforts, and now they're going more and more Democratic. Have you been into the suburbs? Have you talked to political leaders there about this race?
I certainly have. I've been all over the Southeast and all of the counties, and I think they are more moderate and they are independent. The stem cell issue that Rick is now for has been very, very strong for him. His support of Israel has been very helpful in the suburbs where there's a considerable Jewish constituency. But listen, it's tough. There's no doubt about that.
Not a good environment. Probably the worst environment for Republicans since '94. think you would agree with that. Nationwide, worst environment since 1994, when you had a reversal in 94 when you all captured the House and the Senate. Worst environment for any party since then.
Well, that is true. That is true.
All right, John.
Well, I mean, what do you do about that? How do you overcome what every national poll, every apparent trend is that it's going to be a big Democratic year, and you have one of the Senate leaders who remains behind in the polls with not a lot of time to go. I mean, what happens between now and then to turn that?
Well, you show what he has done for the hospitals and the schools, and what he's done on the infrastructure. And then you talk about his seniority. I have been in the Senate for 26 years, and I like to ask a rhetorical question. Do you know how long it takes to get 26 years seniority in the Senate? Sort of like asking who's buried in Grant's tomb. Well, Rick has 12 years.
Yeah.
And at 48, he's got the potential to have decades of additional service. And that seniority is worth its weight in wildcats to the people of Pennsylvania. You talk about that. You talk about what Rick can do for a state.
And he certainly, we're going to run to a break. He certainly has done that. I mean, he's
another break?
Yes, another break. We have 4 paying the bills. We'll be back in a moment with Senator.
There are too many commercials.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. John Baer and I from the Philadelphia Daily News are chatting with our senior Senator Arlen Specter. Senator, let's go. 2 Supreme Court nominees under the belt. Alito and Roberts, tough going, but you managed to get them through. The big question, I think, on everybody's mind, does the president, is he likely to get another nominee? What kind of a battle would it be? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the chances are pretty good. You have a number of justices who are advancing in age, may want to take retirement. Health is always a factor. So I think the chances are fairly good he'll get another pick.
But let's face it, some like Justice Stevens will never leave. I mean, you have to carry him out as long as President Bush is there, and the one.
And his health is good.
And his health is good.
And he's 86.
And let's face it, now the big swing justice on the United States Supreme Court, Justice Kennedy,
who recently had a stint.
Yep, who's now in the majority. Not quite, perhaps, as much as Sandra Day O'Connor is, but back when we reviewed those votes, a lot of 5-4 decisions in which he was the pivotal vote. Direction of the Supreme Court with Kennedy as the swing justice.
Well, I think you still have a moderate court with Kennedy as the swing justice. The confirmation proceedings were difficult. They were widely praised as being dignified and courteous. A couple times I had to intervene. Senator Biden's one of my very good friends, but when he wouldn't let Roberts ask questions, I told him to let him ask questions. And Joe bellowed, well, he's giving misleading answers. And I responded, well, they're his answers.
Right.
Let him give the answers. And then you decide whether you want to vote for him. And then in a rather heavily replayed exchange with Senator Kennedy,
right.
He tried to take over and get a subpoena right in the middle of our proceeding as to Justice Alito, and I had to remind him who the chairman was. But overall, we got 2 very well qualified men through. And there are a lot of people who opposed my reelection, opposed my renomination on my party. And a lot of those people I heard were
there,
very
right?
very glad that I was there to preside in the Judiciary Committee because you only get there with a lot of seniority. It took me 24 years to get there.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a question about that. The process of how we get a Supreme Court justice always seems to me those hearings are thorough and balanced, and they happen before there's a vote on a Supreme Court justice. My newspaper, the Philadelphia Daily News, today has an editorial that takes Congress to task for lack of oversight on the war, on Katrina, arguing basically that Congress gave up its oversight power in getting us into this war and in FEMA, because there had been warnings, there had been hurricanes in Florida that FEMA did not respond to well prior to Katrina. And there's some figures in the editorial that cite the number of hours that were spent by the Congress in oversight hearings prior to those two events. Are we right?
There is insufficient oversight in the Congress of the United States over the executive branch. And I wouldn't want to pick out anybody special, but I would accentuate the positive on what I've done as chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Well, let me, before you do that, let me ask you, is it recent or has it always been the case? Is it getting worse or has it always been the case?
I think it's getting somewhat worse, but the oversight has never been adequate. That is a constitutional function, but it's sort of something you do if you have time. But under my stewardship of judiciary, we have had oversight. We've had oversight, an important hearing last week on the Justice Department wanting to take away the attorney-client privilege. We had very thorough oversight in redoing the Patriots Act, and the Act came out stronger, but we set parameters as to what could be done by way of law enforcement.
How do you fix the problem outside your Judiciary Committee? Do you need a Democratic Congress and a Republican White House to do that?
No. I think that you want to keep Arlen Specter as chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Well, we have about 45 seconds. Anything you want to say to the people of the state?
Yeah, I want to say that it's a great privilege to be one of your United States senators. And today I'm traveling in the state. Pleased to say that I do not live in Washington, that every Monday I'm traveling the state, get back late Monday afternoon in time to vote, and Friday when we terminate, I'm back on the train and staying in touch and thanking the people for entrusting me with 5 terms.
You get the last word. Well, you started that business about going around the state. Last word. Thanks. See you next week.